Hello and welcome back to the Gale Blade News. In today's article we will be focusing on what the Portuguese are criticising about the UK government's quarantine-free list being referred to as absurd. Portugal Foreign Affairs Minister has said his country's exclusion from a list of countries for which quarantine will not apply for people returning to England is absurd. Augusto Santos Silva told the BBC not including Portugal was senseless and unfair. The list of countries exempt from quarantine was published as of Friday. Boris Johnson said 14-day quarantines would remain for countries where the virus was not under control. Other countries excluded from the list, which comes into effect on the 10th of July, include the US, China, the Maldives and Sweden. Mr. Santos Silva told BBC Radio 4's PM programme, "We are very disappointed with the decision of the British authorities. We think it is senseless and unfair. It is quite absurd. The UK has 7 times more cases of COVID-19 than Portugal, so we think this is not the way in which allies and friends are treated." The Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Costa tweeted, comparing the UK's number of coronavirus cases with that of the Algarve, saying, "You are welcome to spend a safe holiday in the Algarve." Labour Shadow Transport Minister Jim McMahon said people up and down the country were keen for quarantine measures to be lessened, but said this is a mess. First we had the quarantine that they were slow to implement, then they said they'd do air bridges, he said. Now we see a plan to let residents of 60 or more countries into England without any reciprocal arrangements. Scotland and Wales are yet to decide whether to ease travel restrictions and describe the changes as shambolic. The quarantine rules will also remain in place in Northern Ireland for visitors arriving from outside of the UK and the Republic of Ireland. Some of those on the list include popular short-haul destinations such as Turkey and Cyprus, as well as long-haul locations including Australia, Barbados, Hong Kong, Japan, New Zealand and Vietnam. However, some countries will require visitors to isolate on arrival or will bar them from entering at all. A list of countries will be exempt from the Foreign Office's advice against all but essential travel from Saturday has also been published. The Foreign Office is expected to update its travel guidance on Saturday, including naming which countries will have a reciprocal arrangement with the UK and not require British visitors to quarantine on arrival. The introduction of the quarantine on the 8th of June was met with criticism from the travel, tourism and hospitality industries, and the easing of restrictions on arrivals from some countries has been welcomed. So what do you think of this ongoing quarantine mess? For anyone who wasn't aware, we actually did have a quarantine at the beginning of the lockdown, and then it kind of faded away, that kind of disappeared. It got shown by various reports that actually people weren't taking it seriously, that people that were coming into the country were kind of hiding illnesses as well, and that by not having a rigid stance like China, South Korea, some of the Southeast Asian countries which were effectively trying to keep it under control, we were already on the back foot, and they actually scrapped it until the 8th of June where they kind of decided to reimpose it. Again, I do feel sorry for Portugal because they do receive a lot of visitors from the UK, but I would say it's a massive risk for the Portuguese, and it's also a massive risk for the British. From the Portuguese point of view, I would say you would not want a country who has as many virus cases or as high a death rate as we've had coming into your country in case we infect you. In the reverse, we shouldn't be going to Portugal because actually there is a risk of being attacked. You can generally tell when someone is a British person, and you can't say that 100% British people are going to be safe, especially when you're going to associate British people with the virus. Whatever you think, leave your comments down below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe.